Our next speaker is the City of Vancouver's Sustainable Development Program Manager, responsible for developing and delivering programs and policy that support Vancouver's sustainable and sustainability objectives. His current projects include developing a strategic plan to achieve carbon-neutral new buildings citywide by 2020, implementing a comprehensive building retrofit program, and creating a green jobs training program. When not at home with his wife and his family or on his bike, he serves on the board of directors for the Cascadia Regional Green Buildings Council. Please welcome Dave Ramslie.
Hello, Vancouver! I'm going to talk about green buildings today, and specifically their past, their present, and their future, and their present future. And how I believe that green buildings are powerful components and necessary components of green communities, and how they can hopefully help us reimagine our future. So what is a green building? You see one behind me right now, and the best definition of a green building is the highest form of green building, a living building. That's what this is. And a living building is a building that creates all of its own energy, treats all of its own waste, and has no toxic chemicals in its production. An energy-efficient home is also a green building, further down the spectrum, but still valid. I know all of this nerdy stuff because my day job is working for the City of Vancouver, moving green building policies and programs forward, from the minutiae of the building code to creative bureaucratic leadership on strategic plans. And what I've learned from this, and why I love my job, is that it's taught me that small changes, or necessary changes, if done in a strategic fashion over time, can hopefully reimagine our future. Anyways, that's the future. That's the end of our presentation. Let's go to the past. The history of the green building movement started in Canada, in Saskatchewan of all places, in 1977, when the federal government built Conservation House. This is a near net zero energy home, and it was a really big deal at the time. In fact, people came from Europe to see it and study it, and they took it away, and they founded the Passive House movement, the most successful green building movement in the world, 25,000 buildings. They've been leaders and never looked back ever since. Around this same time, though, in Canada, we discovered a lot of oil in Alberta, for better or for worse. We had a bit of a minor economic setback, and priorities changed. And we essentially forgot about conservation in this country for about 20 years. Until about the mid-1990s, when a collective group, both north and south of the border, started to realize within the building community, these were architects and builders and environmental nonprofits, that we were the problem. No other industry created as much waste, consumed as much energy or natural resources than the building industry. We were number one. And if we weren't going to be part of the solution, we were going to continue to be part of the problem. And the issue we faced was, well, how do we wrap all these things up into a green building? How do we take energy and waste and where to site that and package it up and talk about it and build it? And that's where the U.S. Green Building Council came in and gave us lead. They allowed us to talk about green buildings and place them on a spectrum. This was a big deal. This was really exciting. In fact, I can only liken the excitement of it was similar to the fervor created by the announcement of the personal computer in the 1980s. It was that exciting. Anyways, I got excited about it. And I liken this simile in that this was an incredibly powerful tool of the future that would change our lives, that would help us realize our goals. But what we found when we took them home and plugged them in was that A, they were pretty expensive, B, we didn't really know how to use them, and C, sitting in isolation on their own on kitchen tables, they didn't really give us line of sight about how they were going to transform our lives. It was similar to how we've been with green buildings for a couple of years now. And what happened with computers was pretty revolutionary next. What happened around the turn of the millennium with computers? Anybody? We started connecting them together. We started building networks. And once we started connecting computers together, we found out that the value really was in the network. And they became incredibly powerful tools for change. And they started making us more effective, to the point now when the network goes down at work, we all go home. Right? Well, We don't. Honestly, Penny, we don't. But that's where we're about to be with green buildings. And a great example of that is the Net Zero building in the Southeast Falls Creek Olympic Village. This is the greenest apartment building in all of Canada. And, yeah, thanks. Just whipped it up overnight once. No, I'm just kidding. But it harvests energy from the sky, from the sun, and it harvests waste heat energy from a grocery store below it. It distributes this energy, it sells off surplus heat via a renewable energy network throughout the whole village. That's how it achieves net zero energy and net zero carbon. It uses this sale of surplus heat to offset its electrical demand. But what's interesting about it is it uses the network to achieve its goal. And by being part of the network, it also greens that network. Exciting. Anyway, here's another example of this in the Athletes Village as well, a different resource use. This is a collective of 3 buildings that are all connected together. It's kind of like a local area network. And all the green areas within that building all collect rainwater, and they dump it to a common cistern below in their shared parking lot, and they use that water for irrigation during our drought months here in Vancouver, and I use that term loosely. But the majority of the year they use it for toilet flushing. And collectively, through this strategy, they're able to reduce their water demand by 50%, something that would be very difficult to do on their own. Again, they're collectively more than the sum of their parts. But the future will not be a mega project. The future will be incremental development. So how does this play out in our neighborhood here? Well, let's say we're going to replace one of these buildings in a neighborhood. And let's say we're going to overbuild the cycling facilities within that building. We're going to have showers and lockers and maybe a mechanic there. And through social networking, we're going to use not hard infrastructure, but social infrastructure to connect people to this. And that's how we're going to green this neighborhood through this new network. We could do the same thing by overbuilding the renewable energy system within another building and laying on some physical infrastructure over this social infrastructure. This idea of building beyond the property line is different to how we're building buildings now. But Albert Einstein said that the level of intelligence required to solve a problem is greater than that which was used to create it. And this idea of building beyond the property line, I believe, is that next level of intelligence that's required to change the big issues that we're facing right now. This is all possible with today's technology. It's possible today, and I believe it's going to transform our tomorrow. Thanks. My time.